an example in how we've done something similar, but in relation to noise. And noise, just like air quality, as many of you will be aware of, has its certain limitations in the fact that you need high-grade static sensors, you need trained acoustic engineers, and again, the data is actually modelled in terms of looking at the transport network around agglomerates, but these don't necessarily give you information in relation to the cumulative impact of noise when you're living or working in a particular community. So in this case study, it was in the Pepys Estate, South London, in the borough of Greenwich. And the community there had been complaining about noise for a number of years. And this noise was being generated by a scrapyard, which was literally situated in the centre of an estate and next to a school. So we worked with the community directly there to carry out a data collection method using handheld grade 2 noise meters that you could get from Maplins at the time. And we designed the approach whereby the area was divided into a grid, and we asked the members of the community to go out morning, afternoon, evening, and use the handheld noise meters to actually take noise readings. And we said, okay, don't just wait for when it's noisy, because we actually want to look at the measurements that you're collecting in relation to the activities and practice. So we need to have quiet times, as well as when the scrapyard is in operation, so we can start looking at mapping and creating averages and understanding what's going on and when. In relation to also just collecting the actual noise measurements, we also asked people to provide some qualitative data in relation to, let's say, the source of the noise, but also how it's impacting people's kind of quality of life. So it was both the kind of quantitative and qualitative data collection in relation to that. They did that over a period of a few months, and we created a map to visualize the data that was collected from that. And this is just a snapshot of one of the maps that was created. So we averaged the measurements and visualized that in relation to the grids where monitoring was taking place. So there was a total of, I think, around 1,200 measurements taken. And this information was kind of given over to the local authority. And for the first time, it was less about the anecdotal kind of reports about the practices and things that were going on in relation to the scrapyard's activities, and it was a foundation in terms of an evidence base. And what that did was the local authority then and the Environment Agency appointed acoustic consultants, as you would do, to actually carry out a detailed analysis of the noise being generated from the scrapyard. And funnily enough, the citizen science data that was generated was very similar to the data that was collected by the trained acoustic consultants. And on the back of that, the Environment Agency actually went out and revoked the license from that particular scrapyard. So it was, okay, the citizen science created an evidence base that then went on to create another survey, and actually, from the community's point of view, it was a result, because there were practices that were actually not conforming to the license that scrapyard had given. So the reality when we're talking about scalability and replicability is that you can't, if you're working in certain areas, you can't dish out 1,000 handheld noise meters. It's just not practical. It's not affordable. So this screenshot that I'm giving you here is actually the same process, and the same project was also carried out around London City Airport in relation to the expansion of London City Airport. So that's actually just a map showing you some measurements that were taken there. But as I was saying, it's not always feasible, it's not always possible to give everybody handheld meters. So this particular project used a smartphone and a mobile app that we developed to basically do the same thing that a handheld meter can do in terms of collecting noise measurements. But obviously, if you know, smartphones are not designed to be high-grade noise sensors, so in terms of the data quality, it doesn't give you that kind of same rigorous data in relation to noise measurements. However, in this particular Everywhere project, we deployed the mobile application, which was made available to people living around Heathrow Airport. And this was in relation to, many of you might be aware of the expansion and creating a third runway around Heathrow. And residents, quite rightly, you know, were worried and concerned not only about the existing noise, but the impact that having a third runway might have on the community in that sense. So they used the smartphone to actually take measurements over a 6-month period. Oh, sorry, my screen is getting extremely slow. Apologies here. And what that did was we collected and created an interactive online map of all of those measurements that were taken over that period. And there were in excess of 6,000 observations. So not only in terms of the noise levels, but also in terms of the source. So you can see in the tag cloud at the bottom what was generating the noise at that time, and also how it was impacting people in terms of the kind of effect that the noise was having on them. So what difference did it make? Oh, let's click. Sorry, I've lost control. Right, so as I was saying, obviously there's only so much you can glean from, let's say, the quantitative data collected using a mobile app in relation to noise. But actually from the Royal Borough of Windsor's perspective, they used the qualitative data that was gathered in this project to actually feed into the Davies Commission, which was basically the council's response in relation to the expansion or let's say the addition of the third runway. And for them, it was very important to be able to kind of highlight and take into account the community's experience in relation to the impact that the aviation noise was having on local residents. So in that sense, it was, you know, a really useful way to kind of evidence how the communities were being impacted by noise in that locality.